I started noticing her before I meant to. Noticing, not watching. There's a difference. Every morning around 7, I'd hear her door click open across the hall, just as my kettle started to whistle. She'd step out in the same gray cardigan, balancing a thermos in one hand, her keys and mail in the other. Always composed, always quiet, the kind of person who moves through life like she's careful not to wake it. I only knew her name from the mailbox, M. Tanaka, middle-aged. Divorced, I'd overheard someone say downstairs. The rest was silence. For weeks, we just traded polite nods. She'd smile, not the bright kind, but a small, decent one. The kind you give when you both know words would just make things awkward. Then one morning, it rained. Not a dramatic kind of rain, just the kind that keeps people inside a little longer. I forgot my umbrella, of course, and was about to make a run for it when I heard her voice behind me. "You'll catch a cold like that." I turned. She was holding out a folded, half-dry umbrella. "I have two," she said, though the way she hesitated told me she didn't. I took it anyway. "Thanks, I'll bring it back tonight." She only nodded. If you remember. The rest of the day, the umbrella stayed in my head. The faint smell of soap, the small tear in its fabric. When I came home, I left it by her door. No note, just the umbrella. Next morning, it was gone. A week later, I found her at the laundromat across the street. She was sitting near the dryers, reading something on her phone, her hair still damp from a shower. Her thermos rested on the table beside her. I said. She looked up, surprised, then smiled. "You remembered." "The umbrella." "The neighbor." Her tone was light, but something in her eyes wasn't. I noticed the faint line where a ring used to be. The way her hands rested flat on the table, not folded, not reaching. "Do you always come here?" I asked. "Only when my washing machine gives up," she said. "Which is often enough," I laughed. She didn't. But she smiled, and that was enough. I offered to buy her coffee from the vending machine outside. She said no, then yes, then just black. When I came back, she'd shifted in her seat. A small move, but she left space beside her. We talked about nothing. The kind of talk that fills the air without trying to mean anything. The weather, the rent, the broken elevator. I found myself wanting to keep her talking, just to hear the low steadiness in her voice. When I joked about the elevator being probably older than me, she actually laughed. The sound startled her, like she hadn't used it in a while. For a moment, she looked younger. As the dryers slowed, so did the words. She checked her watch, frowned a little. "I should go," she said, standing up. "Right, of course." I started to gather my things, but she stopped. Her voice was softer this time. "You shouldn't talk like that." "Like what?" She looked at me, the faintest trace of a smile ghosting across her lips. "Like you're trying to make me laugh." I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged. "It's against the rules." Something flickered in her eyes. Amusement, maybe, or warning. "Yes," she said finally, "it is." I smiled, almost without meaning to. Rules are meant to be broken. Her hand paused on the thermos lid. Then she walked away, leaving it behind. I didn't call after her. Just sat there, watching the metal surface cool. When I finally touched it, it was still warm. And that was the first time I wondered if she'd left it on purpose. She knocked on my door 3 days later. Not loud. Just enough for me to hear it over the sound of boiling water. When I opened it, she was holding her thermos. "You forgot this," she said. "I was starting to think you didn't want it back." "I didn't," she replied after a pause. Then, with the faintest smile, but it felt strange not to. I stepped aside. "Do you want to come in, just for a minute?" She hesitated, her fingers tracing the metal lid like she was considering something heavier than a simple visit. Finally, she nodded. The kettle clicked behind me. She stood by the window while I poured 2 cups of tea. The sky outside was pale and flat, the kind that makes everything feel like a half-memory. "Nice view," she said, though it wasn't. Just rooftops, wires, the faint hum of the city. "It's quiet." "That's enough," she nodded. "Quiet is rare." For a while, we didn't say anything, just the sound of tea cooling between us. Then, almost to herself, she murmured, "Mick's husband used to collect teacups, all different shapes, sizes. Said it made him feel cultured." She laughed lightly, but it was the kind of laugh that didn't rise all the way up. "He left them when he moved out." "I broke most of them," accidentally on purpose. I didn't know what to say. So I just listened, or tried to. I finally said, and meant it, though she waved it away like it didn't matter. It's fine, she said. It was years ago, you just start over, and then one day you realize. Maybe you didn't. That stayed with me, the way she said it. Not sad, not bitter. Just honest. Later she helped me fix the dripping kitchen tap, said she used to handle all the repairs herself. I held the flashlight while she worked, sleeves rolled up, eyes narrowed in concentration. Who taught you this? I asked. My father, she said. He didn't believe in hiring people for things you could do yourself. Guess I never stopped trying to prove I could. A single drop of water landed on her hand. Without thinking, I reached out and wiped it away with a dish towel. She froze. It wasn't a dramatic moment, just a still one. Her hand in mine for barely a second, her breath catching before she drew it back. Careful, she said quietly. That's how rumors start. Her tone was light, but her eyes weren't. I smiled, though my chest felt too tight. Only if someone's listening. She didn't answer. Just turned the tap again, checking the leak. When she finally left, she set the wrench on the counter and said, almost to the floor, "Don't forget to turn the water off when you're done." "I won't." She nodded once, then added, "And maybe don't wait for to knock next time." That night, I caught myself standing by the door longer than I meant to. The thermos was still there. Washed, empty, waiting. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I didn't see her for a week. Not that I was counting, though I noticed things. The hallway stayed too quiet. Her mail piled up in the slot. The faint sound of her footsteps, the ones I'd grown used to, never came. Then, one evening, I caught her outside the building, locking her car. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from work. The kind that sinks into your shoulders. "You've been busy," I said, half a question, half an excuse. She nodded, keeping her eyes on the keys. "Just sorting things out." I wanted to ask what things. I didn't. Instead I said, "The tap's still fixed. By the way." That got me a faint smile, the small, real kind I'd been missing. "Good," she said. "I'd hate to have to come over again." But she didn't leave right away. She lingered, like there was something else she might say. Then the sound of someone coming down the stairs broke it. My friend Daniel, carrying a bag of takeout. "Hey, man," he said, "you coming up?" He glanced at her, curious. "Oh, hi." She smiled politely, that practiced, harmless kind of smile, evening, and then she was gone. Later, Daniel said, "You didn't tell me your neighbor was hot." I didn't answer. Just kept unwrapping the food. He laughed. "I'm kidding. Mostly." But his words stuck, and I hated that they did. That night I heard her door open across the hall late, almost midnight. The sound made me pause mid-bite. I waited for the second click, the one that meant she'd gone inside. It never came. 2 days later she showed up at my door again. No thermos this time. Just her. "Do you still have that wrench?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, and before I could ask what was wrong, she stepped inside. Her hair was damp from the rain. I caught the faint smell of her shampoo, something herbal, clean. "My kitchen tap's leaking now," she said, crouching by the counter. "Seems fair, doesn't it?" I knelt beside her, holding the flashlight like last time. Our shoulders brushed once, then again. Neither of us moved. "You could have just told the landlord," I said quietly. "I don't like asking for help." The wrench slipped. Water spattered onto her sleeve. I reached for a towel, but she was faster, pressing her hand against the pipe. For a second, we were close enough that I could see the small scar near her thumb. The way her breath caught when she turned her head toward me. Her voice came low, steady. "You shouldn't look at me like that." "I'm not," I said. Too quickly. "You are." Silence. Just the steady drip of water. I wanted to say something, a joke, an apology, but the words tangled. Then she exhaled, turned the wrench one last time, and the dripping stopped. "See," she said softly. "Fixed." She stood, wiping her hands on a paper towel, her face unreadable, and as she moved toward the door, she paused. Hand on the frame, eyes on the floor. "For what it's worth," she said, "you're not making this easy." She left before I could ask what she meant. When I turned off the light, the smell of her shampoo still hung in the air. I stood there a long time, fingers resting on the wrench. Almost said something to no one. Almost. It was late afternoon when she asked if I wanted to walk. No reason, no explanation, just, I'm heading up. If you're free. We ended up at the small park a few blocks away. The kind with tired benches and trees that always looked half asleep. The sun was low, the kind of light that makes everything look softer than it is. She carried her thermos again. I noticed her hands shaking slightly when she unscrewed the lid. Maybe it was the cold, maybe not. We sat without speaking for a while, listening to the sound of someone's dog barking in the distance. She said, finally, "You've been avoiding me." I looked at her. "I thought you were avoiding me." "Maybe I was." She sipped her tea. "It's safer." I laughed quietly. "From what?" She turned the thermos cap in her fingers. "You know what?" I didn't answer. I watched her instead. The way the wind moved her hair across her face, the small furrow between her brows when she thought too much. Then, almost too softly to hear, "You make me forget how old I am." That stopped everything. I didn't know what to do with the words. They just hung there, fragile, like something that might vanish if I breathed wrong. "You're not," I started, but she cut me off. "Don't." She smiled, but it wasn't a happy one. "Don't try to fix it. Just let it be what it is." I looked down at the gravel under my shoes. "What is it then?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her bag and took out a book, a paperback worn at the edges. "Do you read?" she asked, her voice back to normal, like we hadn't just stepped too close to something dangerous. "Sometimes." She handed it to me. "You might like this one. It's about people who almost get what they want." I turned it over in my hands. "Do they?" "No," she said, staring straight ahead. "But they learn to live with the almost." The silence between us stretched thin. A bird landed nearby, then flew off again. I said, quietly, "Do you regret it?" Her head tilted. "Regret what?" "Playing by the rules." She looked at me then, really looked. The air between us felt smaller somehow. "I don't know," she said finally, "but I do know this." She stopped. The next words didn't come. Instead, she reached for the thermos, poured a small cup of tea, and held it out to me. Our fingers brushed, just that, a touch, nothing more. But it was enough to unsteady everything. Her hand lingered heartbeat too long before she pulled it back. "You should go," she said softly. "Before I forget why this is a bad idea." I wanted to ask why, but the question got stuck somewhere between my chest and throat. She stood, the sound of her coat rustling in the breeze. When she walked away, she left the thermos behind again. And I didn't know if that was an accident, or another kind of invitation. For a while nothing happened. No notes under doors, no soft knocks late at night, just silence, the kind that doesn't feel empty, just suspended. Her door stayed closed, curtains drawn, even the sound of her kettle, gone. At first I told myself she was busy. People get busy. But then the days turned into a week, and the quiet started to ache in places I didn't know could ache. I caught myself doing stupid things. Checking my phone for messages that never came, listening for her footsteps in the hallway. I even lingered by her mailbox once, pretending to sort through my own junk mail. That's when I saw it. A postcard, half sticking out of her slot. A picture of the seaside. On the back just one line, "It's been nice to hear your voice again, S." I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. The handwriting was careful, masculine, familiar maybe. I went back inside and made coffee I didn't want. It sat there, untouched, cooling beside my phone. 2 days later, I saw her again. In the courtyard, talking to someone. A man, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes and that practiced comfort of someone who used to belong there. They stood close, not intimate but familiar. She laughed at something he said. That soft, surprised laugh I thought I'd earned. When she caught me watching, her smile faded. The man turned too, nodded politely. She called out, her voice flat. "This is my ex-husband. He's just picking up a few things." I said something back. Probably, "Nice to meet you." But I barely remember. My chest felt tight, like I'd inhaled at the wrong time. When they went inside I left, walked without thinking. Past the corner store, past the laundromat, I ended up at the park where we'd sat before. Same bench. Different air. The book she'd given me was still in my bag. I opened it for the first time. Pages filled with underlined sentences, small notes in the margins. One line stopped me. Why are always almost touching, but never enough to feel safe? Her handwriting. That night, I drafted a message. You don't owe me an explanation. I just miss hearing the sound of your door. I read it 3 times. My thumb hovered over send. Then I locked the screen. The next morning her door was open again. I could hear faint music, something old, slow, hopeful. I thought about knocking, just to ask about the postcard, or the book, or nothing at all. Instead, I stood there for a minute, maybe 2, then walked away. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was raining again. Of course it was. The kind of slow, steady rain that turns the world into background noise. I found her downstairs, in the small shared kitchen by the laundry room. The air smelled faintly of detergent and instant coffee. She was sitting at the counter, hair damp, turning a mug between her hands. When she saw me, she didn't look surprised. Just tired. The kind of tired that comes after holding something in for too long. Hey, I said softly. She nodded. Hey, the silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It was weighted. Familiar. I reached for the kettle, more to have something to do than anything else. Tea, she hesitated, sore. The sound of boiling water filled the room, soft, steady, grounding. I poured hers first. She took it without looking at me. You didn't have to come down, she said finally. It's late. I couldn't sleep. Still thinking too much. Always. She took a sip, then set the mug down, pressing her fingers against the rim. You shouldn't wait for me to explain, she said. There's nothing to explain. That's not true, I said quietly. She looked at me then, really looked, eyes tired but clear. It is. I'm older. I'm divorced. I've already been through the part where things fall apart. Her voice caught slightly. You shouldn't have to watch that movie twice. I wasn't planning to watch, I said. I just wanted to stay. She laughed softly, shaking her head. You don't mean that. I do. The rain hit the window harder, like punctuation. I saw the postcard, I said. From your ex. Her hands stilled. You went through my mail. No, I said quickly. It was just there. She nodded slowly, not angry, just resigned. He wants to try again, she said after a moment. Move back. Maybe. He's not a bad man, just not the right one anymore. Do you want that? Her answer was quiet. I don't know. It's easier than starting over again. I looked down at my hands, fingers tightening around the mug. Is that what this was then? A mistake? She took a long breath. No. Just temporary. Something in my chest tightened, but I nodded. Because what else was there to do? She reached across the counter then, slow, unsure, and placed her hand over mine. It wasn't a romantic touch. It was something smaller, heavier. A thank you, a goodbye. You'll forget me, she said softly. I don't think so. Her thumb brushed my knuckles once, then withdrew. We sat there until the kettle went quiet again. Finally she said, You should go. I stood, hesitated, then smiled. Small, real. Okay? She looked up. Okay. And just like that, the space between us was filled again. Not with words, but with everything we hadn't said. 6 months passed before I realized we'd found our way back to something that almost felt normal. Not the same kind of normal, quieter, more deliberate. The kind you earn. The building was still the same, the creaky stairwell, the half-broken elevator, the faint hum of someone's radio bleeding through the walls. But the air felt different now. Softer, maybe, less heavy. She started leaving her door open again, just a crack. On Sunday mornings, the smell of black coffee would drift into the hallway, warm and familiar. I'd time my kettle to whistle at the same moment, a kind of ritual we never named. Sometimes we'd meet in the lobby, by accident, on purpose. She'd ask if I was still taking my morning walks. I'd ask if her tap was still fixed. Ordinary questions that carried more than they said. We never talked about that night in the laundry room. Never needed to. Some things settle better in silence. One morning, I found her sitting on the park bench again. Same spot as before, thermos in hand. I joined her without asking. She didn't look surprised. You're late, she said. 7, I replied, checking my watch. Right on time. She smiled, really smiled this time, the kind that reached her eyes. I forgot you remembered that. We sat there, watching the morning light stretch across the empty park. She poured me tea without asking what I wanted. It was black, the way she used to take it. I moved some of his things out last week, she said after a while. My ex. Finally, I nodded. How did it feel? Lighter, she said. Strange, too. Like closing a book you thought would never end. She glanced at me then, quiet but steady. Thank you for not asking me to stay. I didn't have to, I said. You already did. The words hung there easy, unforced, no tension, no weight, just truth. She reached into her bag and pulled out something. The same paperback she'd given me months ago. The one about people who almost get what they want. Keep it, she said. I think it's your story now. I took it, smiling. Does it end any better the second time? She looked at the sky, then back at me. No, she said softly, but maybe it hurts less. We sat there until the park filled with noise. Children running, dogs barking, the day starting again. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and said, It's not against the rules anymore, you know. What isn't? This. I didn't answer. I just took the thermos from her hand and poured another cup. The tea was still warm, and for once that felt like enough.